Hi there, welcome back to Vancouver Bass Players. Today I'm going to be, I should say my name, I'm Laurence Mollerup, and today I'm going to be interviewing Noah Reitman, who is the Assistant Principal Bass for the Vancouver Symphony Orchestra. Hi Noah.
Hi, Lawrence. How's it going?
I'm doing well. I'm hanging in there today and working on my online videos a lot this weekend and hopefully increasing my quality as we go.
Great. We all need to up our game in this crazy time. So
Yeah, well, I did one on the weekend, and I set up two cameras, and I had this like floating head of myself, and then myself playing, and everybody said, "Why is there a floating head at the bottom?" Okay, live and learn, right? So yeah, yeah. Welcome to Vancouver. I think how many years have you been here now? A couple years?
yeah, I actually got the job in 2015.
Oh wow, so it's
So
longer than I remember.
yeah, so 5 years I've been here now.
Yeah, and
And,
and I remember I think I met you a couple years ago when it was La La Land, and I was playing with the rhythm section, and I think I met you. That was the first day I met you there.
yeah, I remember that was great. That conductor was hilarious.
Playing to a click that is moving was wild, and a lot of us were sort of hearing things for the first time. And the funny part about that gig was my headphones were the only ones out of like 70 sets that did not work.
Oh,
And he was with the stick in his hand, ready to give a downbeat, and I had to go, wait, my phones, and holy cow, that was pressure.
yeah, that's a lot of pressure. It happens though. There's all sort of technical malfunctions in those crazy shows where you got to link up with the video and stuff. But I think that's a cool direction that symphonies are going in. I mean, we're getting a lot of really positive response from our audiences
Yeah, I
on
think some of
shows.
the people that'll see those and like the Game of Thrones shows and where you play those that music will draw people to the orchestra when they're playing other music and they'll come back.
Yeah,
So
certainly. I mean, and that's some of the best music. I mean, we were watching uh, Indiana Jones a couple weeks ago, and I just remember thinking to myself, this music is so incredible. It's just as good as the best classical music.
yeah.
And when people can see the movie and enjoy it so much, and then also realize there's this amazing score going on underneath it, maybe they realize, oh, there's more reasons than just plot and acting that I like this movie.
Yeah, sometimes the music is what's moving them and they don't even really know it. It has that subconscious thing.
Totally,
Yeah.
totally.
And especially if you're playing sort of programmatic music, everybody makes up their own video anyway. When you listen to Ravel or anything, people tend to do that anyway. And I'd love sometime to be able to share what does this music sound like to you and get those comparisons between how it affects us all.
Oh, totally.
Yeah,
And that's something to be so public and yet so deeply personal at the same time. It's kind of,
absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I was going to lead off with a few questions, and maybe if the first one might be about your lineage as a bass player. I know you come from LA, and that you came up to Vancouver, and before that you were with was it New World Symphony for a while? I think was one
Yes.
of the ones. And you mentioned as well teaching at the Colburn School in LA just last week as well. So
Well,
you're
yeah,
still
just
able.
I taught there because I that's where I started. Well, actually, unlike, when you meet a violinist or cellist, uh, they started when they were 3 or 4. And I mean, they may have had a say in it, but no 3 or 4-year-old really has a say in what they're going to do. So their parents were like, "You're going to do this."
Yeah.
Nobody did that to me. For me, it was my mom got me a recording of Sergeant Pepper, and I just fell in love with the Beatles. I mean, I was just crazy about the Beatles. And so, of course, I wanted a guitar. Right away, I wanted a guitar. And I got a guitar, and my mom got me lessons. And, of course, I never practiced. But I fell in love with music, and I wanted to be a musician. It wasn't until 7th grade when I went to public school with a uh, music program that I picked up a bass, and I thought, oh, well, it's just 4 strings, and you only have to play one note at a time. Way easier than the guitar, and you get to play music. Of course, I learned my lesson that it's a completely different animal.
Yeah.
But I had a lot of fun, and I was good at it, and my dad, who passed away when I was 7, had been a big lover of classical music. And only recently did I sort of realize that, so I picked up the bass at 12, that thread of my first 7 years of my life really got reignited at 12. And even now I'm like learning more about my relationship with my father from that. But that's a whole nother story. I'll say that from a bass playing perspective, I was very lucky that my middle school teacher was a bass player. Her name's Janine Revere, and she's a doctor. Dr. Revere is a professor at Cal Poly Pomona, I think it is. I'm so sorry to her. She's probably going to watch this, so I really forgive her. Please forgive me for if I messed it up. But she was a huge influence on me because she was also a bass player. And she said for years, she said, oh, you should go to this guy, Dave Young. He's the best in town. And he was the principal of the LA Opera. And he actually lived a block away from me.
Perfect.
So I could walk down to his house. Of course, it was LA, so I didn't walk down to his house. I drove to his house with bass, of course, as the excuse. But we formed a very special relationship, and we're still very close to this day. We teach together at Idlewild Arts in the summers, and unfortunately Idlewild is not happening this summer, so we're both very sad about that. But he was a huge influence on me, and through him I met all sorts of bass players. He's a big believer in the Rabath School, the Francois Rabath School, and also Paul Ellison, who was also in the Rabath School. So I went through the Rabath books in high school, and I got fairly ambitious, but I still was way out of my league. It all changed after my junior year. I met Diana Gannett at Golden Gate Bass Camp, and Diana was a student of Gary Carr, and she taught at the University of Michigan. And she said, well, why don't you come to Michigan? And I was really lucky to get into Michigan, and I went to Michigan for my undergrad and learned all sorts of Gary style playing. So close to the fingerboard, lots of vibrato, just get that rich sound. So that was an amazing experience. I got to give 3 recitals in my undergrad, really became jazzed about playing music. And from there, I decided to take it more seriously. I went to Indiana University and studied with Larry Hurst. And Larry Hurst is just, he was a teacher he's still teaching. He's retired from Indiana, but he really just wanted to stoke my curiosity. I mean, he just wanted to, it was for him, playing was a musical pursuit, but it was also an intellectual pursuit. And from there, I went to New York, and I studied with David Grossman for a year, which was also very helpful. And then I met, we're all, we're a product. So I met some other great, amazing teachers. I worked a little bit with Orrin O'Brien, who's, her whole, her background is incredible. I mean, just who she's worked with, she worked with Stokowski and she used to usher at Carnegie Hall and watch Toscanini. Yeah. I mean, she was just all over it. She's just a legend. So I worked with her, and she recommended David Grossman, and he was great too. And then I went, I was sort of freelancing in New York. I didn't have a teacher, and one of the most influential people to me was actually Lee Mesh, who's the associate principal in the Metropolitan Opera, he was the first teacher I ever had that sort of matched my level of intensity that I wanted. I mean, he would not accept crap. I mean, Diana was amazing teacher, but if you weren't ready, she was just like, you're not ready, and I'm not going to deal with it, but with Lee, it was like, you suck right now. And I just loved that. I just really got into that. I mean, it was just so fun for me. And I'll never forget, I played for him once, and he was like, it's $100. And so I went and I played, and he was like, yeah, okay. Yeah, that's pretty good. And he took my $100. And then the next time he was like, okay, this time you can either pay me $100 or I've got a cord of wood out in the back that needs to be chopped. And I was like, I'll chop the wood. I don't have any money. And I just loved that because it was like really, I mean, it was like the definition of to woodshed something in a way, you know? I mean, it was literally woodshedding.
Yeah.
I mean, I just felt like we were training for the Olympics or something. And, you know, in some ways, it's an Olympic sport to be a classical musician.
Well, absolutely. In terms of the concentration, the training, the physical aspect of playing without hurting yourself, there's so many connections there. I often think about, now I'm going to say this wrong, Chi-Chi and Negwanu. I'm trying to remember the last name. She's a Baroque bass player.
Oh, yeah, sure. Plays in the John Elliott Gardner ensemble.
Yeah, so and she was like an Olympic level runner.
Oh,
and,
wow.
Yeah, so that really carried her into her bass playing as well. I'm going to get that name properly pronounced. I've only seen it in print. So
Chi-Chi Nwoku? I don't know either. I'm sorry. Now we're both embarrassed. I'm sure.
Yeah, well, it's good to be embarrassed on these things.
I'm on the same thing.
Well, what a wonderful lineage. I mean, it's no wonder that you play at such a high level and having that early inspiration, living a block from your first inspiration is just amazing to me.
Well, and it's so funny actually because, you know, now if any LA freelancer, you know, sees this, they'll be like, screw you. But, you know, I never, like when I was a kid, I didn't respect those people enough, like for the work that they put in. And I also didn't respect from like the cash that they were minting doing that. Like, you know, especially some of the principal players. I mean, they were like in massive mansions. And I thought, oh no, you have to be a Spartan lifestyle as a musician. It's like, no, they were just like making bank with their talent, you know, and that's incredible. I mean, I think those golden days might be over, but still, I mean, it's so cool to see. I go back now and I'll go to someone's house and we'll play music, and I just think, wow, that's incredible that you were able to do that with your musical talent.
Yeah. So the entrepreneurial side of being a musician and valuing what you do, that's a really big aspect for sure.
Yeah.
I wonder if we've gone a few minutes without a bass lesson. How about if you show me something on the bass?
Oh yeah, sure.
So while you're going to get set up, I'll just talk for a second. So I think what we're going to do is Noah and I talked about basic bow hold and working with, getting your string contact with the instrument. So for this lesson, I've got a French bow here, which they look like this. The German bow is a little bit bigger, and that's the style I normally play. But I was a French bow player many, many years ago. And so Noah and I are going to talk about just basically how to hold the bow in your hand and how to get set up. You know, a lot of jazz players might not have played much with the bow, and when they go to put it on the string, there's a sense of, it's squealing or it's just not making good contact. So I'm sure one of the things we'll talk about is the weight of the arm and how you transfer the weight into the bow. And the French bow hold, something like, let's see if I can get that on screen, something like that, with your thumb. If you can see that, that might be something like what he'll want to go for. Again, German and French are quite different, and they use different sets of muscles, and it's a different setup. Oh, it looks like you're ready to go there, Noah. That's great.
Yeah, so I haven't tuned the bass yet today. My apologies.
Does that matter? Do we have it tuned?
So I'll talk briefly about what you want to look for in a bow, because you could go to Long McQuaid, or you could go to you might see one on Craigslist. I'll recommend, if you have about $500 to spend, you can get a great carbon fiber bow.
Yep.
And that's really good because they're well balanced, they're well made. You can throw it out a 5-story window; it'll probably be fine when you get to the bottom. But the advantage of wood is superior tone, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But one test that I like to do when I'm trying out a bow is forget even about the grip. Just hold it by the screw, the silver at the end.
Yep. And
just put it on the string. I mean, this is an amazing bow. But without even doing anything with my hand, the bow wants to stay in the string.
Right.
So in a way, it's almost like potential energy. It's like the relationship between your hand. The hand is almost getting in the way of the pure relationship between the string and the bow.
Right.
Like this is a pure relationship. So what you want to do is make your bow hold as organic as possible to facilitate that relationship.
Right.
So the way I like to think about it first, I'll put down the bass now, is I like to think about it, and I've talked about this in some YouTube videos, but I like to think about it as like the shocks on a car. If the shocks are too tight, or if there are no shocks, I mean, I'm sure you've been on a bicycle or something, and you feel every bump, you know? And then there's where the shocks are gone, and the car is like this, you know, and you can't even see out the front window. So your hand is like a beautiful shock strut system for the bow.
Yes.
So I like to think about putting the bow on the in the middle pad here, and you're going to want to think about the pinky being directly over the eyelet, or the eye. Sorry, the eye of the frog's eye here, and then you bring you curl your hand in just a little, and then sort of tuck your thumb under. So again, it doesn't matter necessarily where your fingers are, but that the pinky is at the eye, and that you tuck your finger in. And then once you're in this position, either any position you go, whether it's up, down, over, you're able to have flexibility from your thumb. The flexibility in the thumb is the most important part.
Oh, interesting.
Yes, that's the absolute most important part, because then it allows you to transfer your weight no matter what. Because if your fingers are straight or rigid, you're going to get the bouncy bicycle, and if they're too loosey-goosey, then you're going to not get any tone or articulation at all. Well, right. You're going to be able to get tone, but you won't get articulation.
That's a beautiful demo. I didn't realize. I often didn't think about the thumb, and so that's great. I also learned this idea of being right on the button. Sorry, I said button. The button's actually here.
Oh, yeah.
On the
that's
eye,
right.
The eye of the frog.
Yeah.
Right there. And I remember Monty Montjoy showing me that and then sort of triangulating. But I think the other thing you said about the springy hand, whenever I see a really amazing bass player, the hand is just so free and so loose. It's really got a lot of mobility. I've been watching, do you know Joe Conyers? I've been watching him on Instagram a lot, and he's a very inspiring bass player. And I've noticed his hold is a bit like this.
Yeah, he's incredible. I mean, he's got those monster mitts. You know, he's like a bodybuilder too.
Yes. Yeah.
So like he's just like, he's one of those guys. And there's a funny, I don't know if it's on YouTube or Facebook or something, but there's this video of the Chicago Bulls like coming to Chicago Symphony. Have you seen that?
I haven't.
Oh, okay, and I think it's like Pau Gasol, one of those big players, okay, comes and takes Alex Hanna's bass and his bow, and his hand, I swear to God, his like hand is like this. He's like that, you know, like, and the sound that it gets out of that bass is just like so much more than anybody I could ever imagine. Like, he just gets up there and he's like, you know, on the bass, of course, like he scrolls like at his chest, you know, and he's just like. So anyway, I like to think about that sometimes when I'm trying too hard, you know?
Yeah, using what you've got rather than forcing anything.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, so you want to talk a little bit more or about the how the bow relates to the string, or is that?
Well, I'm thinking about the time of this, and maybe we could do one more little thing before we move back into some more questions that we talked about before. So the thing I would maybe have you demo would be a down bow and an up bow, if you wanted to do that, and maybe talk about the difference between the two. I know with my bow, with German bow, you know, we really have the thumb on top, and you know, at least in the way I play. And we have that ability to transfer weight quite easily, so that the tip notes can start with more definition. And then at the frog end, we're always taking weight off because the arm is so close. So I'm sure, you know, it's not so different with French bow. But if you have anything about down bow, up bow, maybe that'd be a great thing to teach as well.
Yeah, sure. Well, for that, I mean, it has to do with that flexibility of the thumb.
Right.
I mean, there are different schools of thought, but for me, you know, it's a little bit like at the frog, you're playing with your thumb fully tucked, and then by the time you get out to the tip, your thumb is quite straight. So I'll try to demonstrate. I'll see if you can get that angle.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can show you.
Yeah, I can see your bridge now, so I think that's going to work just fine.
Yeah. So if you look at my thumb, see my thumb is tucked in, and then as I get to the tip, the thumb is straight. And this just allows so that you can get maximum amount of torque and maximum, maximum amount of torque at the frog and at the tip. Sorry. And so, I mean, there are other things you want to think about, and this is German bow or French bow. When you're bowing like this, you want to get your bow as straight as possible. I know some amazing German bow players with a crooked bow, though. So, it is what it is. And what you're going for, and an easy exercise for anybody to do, and I do this every day. I give my students these like easy exercises, and they think, oh, I'm so much better than this. So it's like, sorry, this is what I do all day. Yeah. Like if I only have an hour or 20 minutes, like I'm going to do the easiest stuff. I'm not going to do fireworks, Right. So what I like to do is, and this is on my videos on YouTube, so I won't spend too much time, is I like to turn on the metronome to 4 clicks at 60. How do you start this thing? Hold on. Sorry. I'll get my metronome. Don't understand Maggie's metronome. That's the long and the short of it. Okay, let's see here. So 60 minutes, 60 beats per minute. Sorry, not 460 minutes, and just four beats, so a whole note. And all you're focusing on is how do I use my body to get an even sound from frog to tip and tip to frog. So. And one way to think about that is playing on the treble side of the string on the down bow and on the bass side of the string on the up bow. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, I remember seeing a video by Michael Klinghoffer, and he talked about using a guitar pick and changing the angle so that, like you just said, when you're coming on the D string, when you're playing the G, when you're playing the D, you're actually closer to the G for your down bow.
Yeah.
Your up bow is closer to the A.
Yeah.
So you get this natural kind of figure 8 bowing.
Yes.
And I noticed for me, it cuts down on the chiff at the beginning of the note if I remember to do it properly.
Absolutely. And it's very fun to think about it too for your body mechanics.
Yeah.
Because instead of like you're like actually like just like an infinity sign, like a figure 8.
Perfect.
So anyway, maybe that's the idea I would impart. So I could do that for 5 or even 20 minutes a day and really feel like I got something out of it.
Amen.
It improves my relationship with the bass. Yeah,
exactly. Those fundamental exercises just never end, and I think that's so core, especially for our instrument. Well, it's true for every instrument, but I know for the bass for sure, the physicality of how you do things, it's so important to set up properly. I'm going to segue there, Noah, and just let people know that you have a class coming up at the VSO School of Music for bass technique on Fridays. That's 4 till 5 p.m. And I will add on a link here, probably in my comments on YouTube. It's only $95 for the 4 sessions. All through June, where people can study with you and learn about things like this, about bass technique.
Yeah, it would be great. I mean, this is exactly the kind of stuff we'll work on. We're also going to work on some etudes, help people with their sight reading for classical music, which is kind of an intense subject.
Yes.
And yeah, just talk about bass and be there for each other. You know, I want it to be an interactive experience with other bass players.
Well, this
Well,
sounds just excellent. Like I was saying before, I'll probably stop in myself because nothing like, getting back to the fundamentals and thinking about how to play.
sure. Yeah, great. I'd love that. Please.
Well, that's really excellent. Thank you so much for the interview today, Noah. And I think maybe we'll end if there's anything you wanted to add about maybe tips for getting through the quarantine, how you're taking care of your mental health during the quarantine, or maybe tips for aspiring bass players. I think a lot of that will come through in your workshop at the VSO school.
Sure.
But if you want to have a closing remark, I'll give that over to you.
Well, I thank you so much. Thank you so much again for this opportunity. And I'll just say that, my wife, Maggie Haspatcher, is a musician too. And she's an amazing bass player, but also a wonderful musician of other instruments. And I've really been enjoying taking this time to pick up my guitar, to work on singing, to work on just listening to new music. And just think about yourself. It's so easy to say, I'm a bass player. I'm a bass player. Well, no, you're a musician.
Yeah.
And then beyond that, you're a person, right? So how does your bass playing demonstrate your musicianship, and how does your musicianship demonstrate your humanity?
That is wonderful. Let's sit on that for a minute. How does your bass playing demonstrate your musicianship, and how does your musicianship demonstrate your humanity? I think that would be a great quote to actually, put up on a wall somewhere. That's really, it reminds me of what Charlie Hayden talks about. If you practice long enough, you might become a good musician, and if you're a musician long enough, you might become a better human being.
Yeah, and I think that's why, the most famous musicians you see are so much more than their music. Like Yo-Yo Ma. I'm sort of paraphrasing Yo-Yo Ma there. So he had an interview in the New York Times, which I recommend anybody check out, where he said something similar about, he said he ran into Pablo Casals when he was 7, and he said, always leave time for baseball, which means like always leave time to be a human, basically. Yeah. That's what he interpreted it as. But I just love seeing Yo-Yo Ma out there and just thinking about people. And then yesterday he played all the 6 cello suites in one sitting. And like, how old is he? He's in his 60s. The guy's like killing it. Yeah. So I don't know. I'm inspired by that kind of stuff where people can just sort of chug on forward. And in this quarantine time, if you can't do that, that's okay too. Right. Just try to make yourself some food every day or something. I don't know.
Yeah, that kindness bit is really important. I tend to be a really driven person, and during quarantine, I've been extra hard on myself, and I've been realizing that, hey, this is a special time. And there's been days where I got up at 2 p.m. and ate ice cream because I was too stressed out. So,
yeah, sure.
We all need to forgive ourselves for some of those days, and kind of the resilience part of it, get back up on the horse that threw you and have a better day the next day.
Yeah, and know that everybody's in the same boat.
Yeah.
It was funny. I have a friend in New York who he's a really driven bass player, and sometimes we'll text and I won't hear back from him for like 2 weeks, or more, and I texted him the other day, how you holding up? He called me like right away, and I'm thinking, everybody's in the same boat, like we're all, even the busiest people in the world that never have time, like they could just pick up the phone, you never know. Maybe try to find your favorite musician and send them an email. Maybe they're they're so free right now, they'll write you back.
Yeah, exactly. And that's part of this process for me, has been meeting all the bass players in Vancouver and interviewing people and letting Vancouver players know about all of us. So this will go up on the Vancouver bass players page on Facebook, but I'll have it on my YouTube as well, and you can also use it on your own. So
Great.
we'll be able to, spread the community a bit, because these kind of things, we're sure we're not in the same room giving a lesson where you can give feedback to me. But we could, over Zoom, you can do so much of this stuff now, and it's just a great way to build community.
Totally. I thank you so much for doing it. It's great because, this is such a great city, and it is a great bass community, and we could just keep building it day after day. So, thank you so much for taking a leadership role in that. It's really, really appreciated.
Well, you're very welcome, and thank you for the good lesson today. And I look forward to checking in with you at the VSO school in June. And I hope you have a great afternoon.
Thanks. You too.
Okay, thanks.
All right.